time for us to show forth the other side of Nuwaupu. And that principle has always been raised amongst the ancient Mitzrayim. You want to call them that, Kemet, you want to call them that, Tamara, whatever you want to call us. The principle is called Mat. It's the first principle of every order. And the sacred gathering spot is called Waset. It has been translated as Karnak, Aswan, but the sacred spot where the sacred temple was called Waset. You hear me? And the symbol was called Mat. Mat has been often interpreted to mean justice. I think in the Islamic world, the best interpretation of Mat became jihad. And those amongst them that were physical took jihad to mean physical war. And those amongst them called the mutasawwif, or the Sufi, took jihad to mean a spiritual struggle inside of oneself against justice or injustice. The Quran even said, injustice and impartiality will not be tolerated. So the symbol that you raise is the ostrich feather. You may have noticed it in the hieroglyphs. Many of your ancestors or deities have the symbol of the ostrich feather, and that's called the mat. That's the foundation of all the mystical orders worldwide, be they Native American, Freemason, Essene, Magus, Knights of Columbus, Shriners, Theosophical Society, Astara, Rosicrucian. They all go back to the mat. And this is why they say one of the first things that was created was the quill. The quill, which is the pen that did all the inscriptions of the Greek deity Tahuti, was the ostrich feather. They would carve it and they use it, the scribes, to write the many books of ancient Egypt that most people today have forgotten. But that was our symbol. Remember that symbol, mat. It represents the struggle within inside. The reason why they chose the feather, because the feather is a very sturdy object, but in wind it fluctuates. But it'll flow with the wind. You notice the Native Americans put feathers on their arrows to make it steer straightly. Or in ancient Egypt, that same symbol represented steering the car and the bob through these troubled times, these winds. They call them sentimental winds of life. When pressures come down, the person that has a strong inner side survives. The person that has a weak inner side falls to the wayside, always. Those people whose principles in Nuwaupu are based on a spiritual thing will survive any changes. Just as those people who are Ansari spiritual, regardless of where the surface went, they were still Ansaris. Whether we was calling ourselves Hebrews, or Nuwaupians, or Native Americans, or cowboys, whatever we called ourselves, because their roots in what we were doing were in the spiritual, not in the physical appearance of being a Muslim, wearing a tagiyah, wearing jalabiya. That wasn't where they were at. They were there spiritually. They were a cosmos. They were a part of the cosmos. The utterance, that word that stirs inside each one of us. And they get anchored in the word. And the foundation of it is the word is true or false. False manifests in the physical, truth always in the spiritual. Because you can't lie in the spiritual sense. You cannot lie to your soul, because you cannot lie to yourself. And that's why in the language Hebrew they had nafesh and in Arabic nafshi. And you had combined the word spirit and self as one word. You could not lie because you cannot betray your spiritual self. You will tell yourself the truth. So you are your best master, thus you are your best God. Because you cannot lie to God. And the only being that you come in contact with that you cannot lie to is yourself. So God therefore becomes the judge of the judge. That's why he said, I am that I am. Repeated, I am twice. I am that I am. They say, oh, I am that which I am, or I am whom I am. He identifies his outer part, his outer being, and his inner being. He never told him his name. When they ask you his name, say, I am that I am. You have to learn the principle that I am that I am merely means what you see is what you get. It's very simple. It sounds complicated. They've turned it into all these different mystical interpretations in the Kabbalah of the Jews, but it simply means I am that I am. No more, no less. So cosmosis, if we're going to spend this evening before we go into the ritual, is to ask you questions about the spiritual. Be careful, because there's several levels here of cosmosis. Everybody's not on the same level. So you can't ask me questions and expect me to answer questions from the white or black level and then the crimson level. You'll be getting answers to lessons they haven't studied yet or degrees they haven't gotten into. So you have to be wise enough to have the question vague enough that I can answer it vague enough in order not to probe into what is not ready for certain people who have not raised to that degree yet. All right? Any questions that you want to? I know one thing everybody keeps asking me, let me add this, is in our principles it says you got to take a long walk on a short path. You say, what do you mean by that? What it means is, I said that back in, way back in 1970. And what I mean by that is we had a very short period of time to take a long walk. It takes most people a lifetime to be just a Christian, or a lifetime to be a Jew, or a lifetime to be an Egyptologist. And I said, well, between now and between 1970 and the year 2000, we have 30 years. We got to take a long walk on a short path. The short path was 30 years. The long walk was the amount of information and the amount of schools of thought that you would have to go through to be transformed from mortals to immortality, transformed back into gods, back into deities, back into nothing. That was going to be a long journey on a very short path. That's what it meant. If you want to be a good cosmos, you've got to learn to take a long walk on a short path. And most of you who've walked with me for years have gotten so much information that it baffles the normal pedestrian when they encounter you on the streets. How could you possibly know that much information? The answer is, well, I took a long walk on a short path. And you're still on just one of the long paths. It's taking you to a short end of a stick. Any questions? Yes. Make yourself heard, Alex.
What do we do about the knowledge we didn't get? Like, say for people that came when we were in Nuwaupu, how does the knowledge from the other schools behind us affect us being the goal?
That's such a good question. It's frightening. Because what I found out, that you have two types of old timers. I should say years ago, old timers are faithful but not true. You have two types of old timers. Those that were rooted in the community physically, again, those that were rooted in the community spiritually. Those that are rooted in the community spiritually have a lot of spiritual insight on things they learned from me over the years. And that's their strength. But those that are rooted in the community physically were looking at me the way Musa looked at El-Khidir and thought they knew what they was looking at. And thought they was figuring out what I was doing. And as we get down this far, some of them look over now and see they never really understood the man they was talking to. You follow? So some of you people who just got here will never be able to have those schools. And you should have had by now spiritual masters raised amongst us who had taken that long walk on a short path and been able to come and instruct y'all in the many experiences that they went through while walking that path with me. Unfortunately, so many of them didn't because their hearts wasn't in it. They were just here physically. They weren't here spiritually. They never really heard the message. You with me? So we missed those areas. It doesn't mean, believe me, that old timers are good. That's not true. Both of them are faithful, like I said, but they're not true to me. And they'll be the first one to stab me in the back. You follow? Because they were not groomed to be true. They came out of a world where dishonesty and self-preservation and self-righteousness and ego was the reigning force, and introduced them to a culture like the Ansar Allah tried to introduce, which meant restraining yourselves from the world and the families and everything else to prepare yourself. Most of them couldn't do it. They only pretended they did while they was in Ansar Allah, and they were still on the phone, they still doing all the things they was told not to do. So they never really got the spiritual side of what I was teaching. And we opened the Sons of the Green Light years ago for the Sufi, and we started and we had to stop because people were taking the lessons and giving to their loved ones. And passing it to their wife, it was my wife, so it's okay. It was my husband, so it's okay. And the spiritual masters came to me and said, they are dishonoring the secrets, they're not keeping them sacred. So we must go underground again. And that's why I folded. And we had hopes in this time that it will come forth again, but we're short on time. A little bit of time to get the job done, but it's time for us to raise again. And if people here can keep the secrets safe, then things will be revealed to them. As of now, I haven't really opened the doors to ancient Egypt to you and given you the secrets that we have kept sacred for so long in Washington. Knowledge that you're supposed to know about yourself and how it all happened. I haven't done it as of yet. I talk about history, I talk about science, I talk about the creation and destruction of the world, but I haven't pulled that elite group aside and passed on those secret words, the word that Asif wanted from Ra so bad. The secret words the Freemasons have been trying to get that gives you that power of divinity. I can't pass it on until people are ready. And you'll know when you're ready when you become your own judge. You follow? So it doesn't make no difference if you was here 20 years or 20 minutes. If you intend to do the right thing, intend to work by spirit and not by body, intend to become a part of the rays of the sun's light, it'll be easy and you won't have to miss nothing. But if you come here and you just want to be a part of a mystical order because it makes you feel spiritual, you don't take your initiations, you don't follow the instruction, you don't do any things that is subscribed to in lessons, then you just waste your mind and your time. And it's just something else to do. In the Freemason Lodge, there are those that are serious, and there are those that just buy their way through the 3 degrees. You follow? You just read them and they just walk around masturbation with a ring and a symbol, and they don't even have a clue of the secrets and the hidden meanings of these things. None whatsoever. But they think they do. They go into fraternity. They go to the lodge meetings. They go to conventions. They put on the apron. They put on the 3 great lights. They took their Bible, compass, and square, and they learn certain of the triad terms that they use, from degree to degree as they raise, but they don't, none of they never pass the royal arc and turn right. They pass the royal arc and they're hit with a light in their eyes. And that light I spoke about several times is a blinding light. On this side of intellect, light is blinding. And the way to teach a student is to teach him about the light. Tell them the light is the knowledge, the light is the intelligence, the light is the intellect, the light is the guide, the light is the way, the light is this. But light blinds. Darkness don't blind. And all Freemasons are blindfolded, as I mentioned just yesterday. And while they're blindfolded, in that period that they're waiting in the lodge for someone to remove that blindfold, the inquisitive mind starts to work. in the darkness, their mind starts to speed up, starts to race. What's going on? What's going to happen here? What's coming up next? What's going on? Who is this? What's that scent I smell? What's this here? This wood? You understand? Why the table toe? Why my leg, one past leg raised? Why this? Why that? You follow? That's when they're divine. Once they remove the blindfold, then they're blind. When you hit them with the light of Freemasonry and start giving them the principles of Freemasonry, and start giving them the tools of Freemasonry, and they put the Bible in their hand, and they point down on the altar, and they open the Bible, and there they put a compass and a square, and they look down and say, these are the three great lights. And they look down at them. When in actuality, three candles are surrounding the altar, and those are the real three great lights. When you have the person look down, they point down, he looks down, looking away from the three candles that represent the three suns, they know right then that he is blinded by the light. And that light is the compass and the square, and how they will build this Bible around him and reshape him from a God into a mere man. You understand? So, in our order, all the symbolisms, all the tools that we use, all are geared towards you being able to see in the dark and avoid the beam of the light. You understand? Yes.
How do you know once you reach that point of enlightenment, then what?
See the word? See the word enlightenment? I'm just saying, see how they did it? I'll tell you what. When you get to the point in the enlightenment that in all that you read and all that you studied, you still feel there is what's the word? Say it again. A void. And what follows void in the Bible? Void and darkness. Once you finish all the studies, and all the religious dogma, and all the arguments of who was here first and who's the greatest, and genetic this and science this, and then you still are hungry for something. You follow? And that is the spiritual journey from void into darkness. And in darkness is tranquility. But they taught you the prince of darkness, the devil, is evil. See the reverse? And the light is right. The warmth, bathed in the light. In ancient Egypt, what they had was the three suns that you know as what? Shemesh, Utu, and Asu. They had them as Atun, and Amun. And those are the three lights that you see in the Masonic Lodge representing the three candles, or even on the floor of our lodge in Hoptep, the three candles. You only need to light the candle if you're in the, let me ask you about that for a minute. If you're in the dark, are you with me? And the dark is ignorance, absence of intelligence, absence of common sense, evil. How do you have the intellect to know to strike the match? How do you know to light the candle to get the light if darkness is ignorance? So you see where the deception came in. The beings that were in darkness knew about the light. People in light cannot see darkness. While you're on earth and you look through the day, you know there's light, but right outside the earth's atmosphere, you know there's darkness. Which is more, the light that surrounds the planet or the darkness that is the universe? So, which one would be more likely where the Supreme would dwell? In that light that is contained and restrained within an atmosphere based on reflection, or in a boundless universe? In a boundless universe where darkness is, but there must be intelligence. If that intelligence or if that darkness was transformed into light, by combining hydrogen and helium atoms to make them create a cycle that created a sun that sent out a beam and exploded and created solar systems. There was some intelligence involved there. But that intelligence was in darkness, and the results was the light. So void and darkness was intelligent, because even in their Bible it said what? Well, what did it say before that? In the beginning, God created heaven and earth, and what? And void and darkness upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the surface of the water. Start again. After it was void and darkness upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the surface of the water, the Spirit of God was moving in, and then he said, let there be. And that's when he started the chain reaction of consideration. You know what I mean by that? God created and then had to stop to see whether it would be good. He looked and said, and he saw that it was good. So when things got into light, it did not necessarily mean that they were good, because God created these lights and then said, saw that the light that he created was, so the light was not necessarily good. And that's why in Islam they had Nur and Nar. And Nur represented the light and Nar represented the fire. And therefore that light was not necessarily good. It was always, as I said years ago, independence of how one uses it. You can strike a match to light a candle to guide, or you can strike a match to burn down the house and kill everyone. There is temperament in light. There is no temperament in darkness where there is no attempt. Because in darkness, your only fear is tripping over something you don't know is there. So if you hold still and hold your peace in darkness, divine manifests. But where there's light, there's doubt. Yeah? You'll know because your mind will reach a point where you start to say to yourself, there is more to know. There is more to know. And that hunger will cause the divine in you to come forward if you discipline yourself. Yeah? And there is more to know. It's not out of reach. It's out of trust. I can't pass the secrets on to you people until I know you're ready for them. They've been protected for thousands of years. There's nothing to play with. You hear me? Yes. Let yourself be heard.
So is it good to sleep in total darkness when you go to bed? Because sometimes
it would make a difference, because once you go to sleep, you won't see the light is on and out anyway. So it really doesn't make a difference. Those are religious mythologies created while you was in certain schools on that what? Short path, right? Had to teach you the way they thought. In order for you to digest those schools thoroughly, had to teach you Islam as if I believed it. In order to get you to believe it. Because all it was about is believing. And then we had to get to the point where we had no longer a need for beliefs. If also there it said, don't sleep in dark. Why? Because the monotheistic principle, which is the principles of the physical, and what was void of any spiritual knowledge, is always consumption by fire due to judgment. But in this case, the God of light is not using it for intellect, he's using it as nar, fire. The word they use in the Torah, which they borrowed from the Sumerians, was or, flames, light, in the sense of burning. So this God warns you that if you are not obedient to me, out of whatever other gods that you chose, I will burn you up. You hear me? And you're taught that in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. If you're not obedient to me, on Judgment Day, I will judge you and I will burn you up. So the principles of monotheistic beliefs is fear of being burnt up, being consumed by fire. Meanwhile, they teach you dwell in the light, stay away from the darkness of ignorance, dwell in the light, and then tell you at the end of the road that we're going to burn you up if you don't do everything the way I say do it. It's right, because you dwell in the light, and it's the sun and the environment that ages and kills you. So you're already in that path if you are a physical being. If you are a spiritual being, then you spend the short time that you walk under the sun's rays to raise yourself spiritually past the care of the physical body. And it'll care for itself. It'll sustain you if you stop what we call patronizing it and flattering it and gorging it and stuffing it and painting it and all the different things you do to it, where it becomes incapable of performing for itself. You maim your own body. Your body is just a vehicle to carry the spiritual you through this earthly journey. And you're supposed to be raising yourself in degrees spiritually, so that by the time you take the garment of flesh off, the rest of the path is easy. You just blend back into the rays. You see what I'm saying? So it's not best to sleep in dark or light or dark. Because regardless, when you go into that state, past sleep paralysis, into what they call sleep, you don't see it anyway. And if anything is going to attack you, it's because you allowed it to and believe it can. All right? Yes?
Does lucid dreaming or waking sleep have to do with a certain state of consciousness?
Say it again.
Does lucid dreaming, or it's called waking sleep, have to do with a certain state of consciousness?
Yeah, it has to do more so with the vibrations of the body. The body is vibrating at a certain pace. That's why you have people say, when I'm getting ready to go into a transcendental state, I must drop my body down to alpha wave. Now, why would they go to the first letter of the Greek alphabet, which would be Aleph or Aleph or A? It is. Why would they say? So where is man vibrating? Well, man is vibrating an eighth up. He's vibrating at an octave above. And he has to make that journey down to alpha wave, where his body therefore is in tune with the Om. You follow that? Now, in between those, in that, everybody knows the octave is 8 tones, right? In that, let's say, regression of sound going down, there are other beings who are able to vibrate in and out. And those beings step within your dreams, because while you're dreaming, you start dropping down. Have you ever listened to a cat when a cat is sleeping, how it purrs? You ever heard a cat? Anybody have owned a cat before? And a cat purrs when they sleep? You know, so you purring sound. That's because they're dropping down. Human beings usually drop no farther than out of the 8 to 4, so they stay in what's called sleep paralysis. They're in a paralyzed state, and oftentimes, if they wake up at that point before their body has regressed to one to start the journey back up for waking up, they'll wake up and their body will still be asleep, and their eyes will open and they will be paralyzed. Thus the term sleep paralysis. And in that state, the body panics, and it goes to the brain and shoots directly to the hippocampus area of the brain and starts to find solutions to things on this side and that side at the same time, and thus hallucination begins. People start to hallucinate. They start to have visions of things that they create or have experienced themselves. Remember, man is a creator and thus a designer. So he can design monsters to terrorize him or angels to guide him. He can fly as high as he wants, swim as long, as deep as he wants in that world. In that world at the 4th level coming down from the 8th octave. You follow that? So it does definitely have to do with a mental state, which has to do with the vibrational level of the human being. And human beings have to learn to travel that octave back and forth at random. And that's what Om wants to teach people, how man starts at the 8th, drops to the 7th, and 6th, and 5, and it's all the way down. At any given time, you can go into alpha, as they call it. You follow it? And your body just purrs. Your heart starts to slow up. You breathe less, and then you start to make that transit state. If you get all the way down to 1, you're with me? Then you can get a new boost. Just like when you're extremely tired because you stayed up for 2 days, you find at the 48th hour, you get, or even the 24th hour, you get a boost, and you get this, what they call a second breath. You're working on etheric now. You're no longer working on blood. That extra boost you get when you're extremely tired and driving, all of a sudden you say, I gotta wake up. Boom, you get this surge, you're able to drive another 100 miles. That's moving into the etheric. When you learn to take this journey backwards, back into yourself, you follow the journey inward, when you get down to 1, and you learn to vibrate there, then it's easy for me to take you over into the etheric world. Because on the other side of this 1 hydrogen existence starts 1 ether. And all the way up to 8. When you get to, in the element sense, what can happen? Because the element sense is from hydrogen to 8. And 8 is? Oxygen. You see that? A gas is formed. So when you come down from 8 to 1 and go up to ether, when you get to 8 ether, you make a transformation into Etherian form, another gaseous form, another form of gas. And you'll be able to travel that ladder backwards and forward. Then if anything begins to happen to you on the physical plane, between 8 and 1, all you do is drop your vibrational level and transport your essence into the etheric world and wait to see what happens in the physical. If the physical body becomes damaged to the point where you no longer use it, but you have a job to do, you're able to pick anyone from your family who can vibrate on the same type of blood, because the liquid is oxygen, water, H2O, same kind of blood as yours. You could jump into their body to get a certain assignment done. Oftentimes, relatives will come back to a person in their family who they think are vibrating the same, and the person becomes afraid from seeing this gaseous etheric image in their room, and the adrenaline produces a serum that cuts off or builds a gate where this walk-in cannot get into your body. So your grandmother who came back to get a message to someone who needed them comes to your bed, at the head of your bed, but then she turns and leaves. And she just says, I'm well, everything is fine, because you closed the gate through fear. You follow? We have to learn that monotheism created fear to cut you off from the spiritual world. Their whole philosophy, their whole doctrine of religion is based on stay afraid, fear Allah, fear the Lord, fear retribution, fear hell, fear judgment, fear. You notice that? So you don't stay in a celeste state, a bliss state. You stay in an ever-regretful state, because it's near impossible as a predominantly physical being most of the time not to do disagreeable things. Right? And once you do a disagreeable thing, and the law is if you do one sin, you're going to hell, you inherit a new, more dreadful attribute, guilt. And enough guilt will make you say, what difference does it make? I'm already going to hell. I'm already a bad person. I'm already a disagreeable person, so I might as well not try to make the journey back. And that could not be far from the truth. Once you learn not to fear, once you take on the role of God and take on responsibilities for your body and your soul and your spirit, those 3 great principles, that's the 3 great sins. When you conquer them, you conquer it all. And you can make that journey back and forth. That's what OM is about. OM is not, you studied books and you may have got bored, so well, I've been reading OM, I don't see where I'm getting any spiritual, because it's about waiting until the people who join OM, because they want a transcendental meditation journey, get fed up and leave. And those people who want to stay will be here, and then we can get down to business. You follow what I'm saying? Anything else? you make the intention in your mind to change positions, you must break your chain of thought. Because you have to think, or I'm going to get up and go sit in a chair. So it means you got to start all over again. If you try to get up and pick up where you were at, it's impossible because you put a new thought in between. And that was, I got to get up. Oh, where's the chair? That chair's more comfortable. I'll sit over there. Or I'll just sit over there. Let me get my rug, because my rug is a little soft. It was hurting my ankle. And then hurt comes in. Hurt links to a whole bunch of things in the subconscious mind. Wow, I was hurt before. I fell out of a tree. Remember when I was a kid, I got hurt. I got hit by a baseball. Or I hurt what? I hear somebody crying. Are they hurting? Everybody's hurting. You follow? And the mind is so powerful and works so fast, and it starts to digest that information so quickly that you're off that path. You got to start all over again. You got to sit down in the middle, meditate, right? And then start to contemplate and rebuild it again. You know what I'm saying? Believe you me, it's worth the time. If you're too lazy to give that much, that extra moment to it, then you're really not entitled to the rewards. Yeah.
When you were just explaining the traveling from the 8 octaves back down to the 1.
Remember, I used octave because I was using something I was hoping everybody would understand, which is the tones in music.
Right.
Okay? Middle C would be the most destructive.
Right. Okay, now when you were explaining that, what certain exercises do you suggest to get you able to vibrate on? We're able to travel from the 8 octave back down to the 1.
That's what Amon is teaching. We've just started now. I've just introduced y'all to this tone of Om. This tone, Om, in the human voice is a replica of the sound of the multiple big bangs that took place. Different explosions in the universe. When they finished exploding, I think in Islam I used to say babies go khe. That's why they go khe. They remember that vibration as they were coming into existence, and they can hear the universe from the other side, and they hear things rubbing to create friction, to create sparks, to create life. So they hear khe, and that's why they use the word khe for creation in Hebrew as well as in Arabic, which they grab as usually from the Sumerian doctrine. Or khat in Egypt means that dead body, khat, that dead existing thing waiting for transformation, right? Amun is supposed to teach you this gradual transformation. First, I've got to teach you how to sit down and focus your energies, conquer the material world and the things that surround you that seem to be so important to you. You follow? That's one. Or to give you the power to be able to cook it off because you're in a world where there's a million things you have to do, but be able to have a certain tone or note in your mind that when you hear it, be it Om, it automatically starts you on that journey. You follow? This is a process of learning. It's not about saying, tell me exactly, Pop, exactly what I can say so tomorrow I can click it on. If you did make the transition, when you got down to the 4th octave, when you got down to the 4th note within that octave, all kind of demons that are in your subconscious mind that have been planted in there by the media intentionally, every monster that you've ever been taught to believe is real and did as a child before the mind of logic and evaluation could grow while you were still in an imagination state. Every little creature you saw and everything you envisioned, you believe it or not, you stored it in your heart as real. And these are the things that you shape to create your nightmares now that you're a grown man. You just make them a little more sophisticated than they were when you saw them on television. They might have just been a headless creature that was chasing around Daffy Duck in a cartoon when you digested, or the headless horseman who scared people with a lantern and no head through Halloween. These things stayed inside you, in your essence. You follow that? And they're dormant, waiting to come out. And you can combine them the way you take Mr. Potato's heads and put little pieces together. You can put little pieces of memories of fear and traumatize yourself. So you just can't go jumping back there. And that's what happens to many people who join these meditation groups, and they're on a very high spiritual level because their mothers and fathers genetically were high spiritual people, and they get there and they get possessed. Or they go to a Pentecostal church and they get possessed. Or they go to a Yoruba meeting and get possessed. Or to a Santeria and they get possessed at a Shango meeting. Or spiritual Baptist in the islands. They get possessed the first day. Other people sit there and say, why is it not bothering me? I'm not getting the Holy Ghost. How come I'm not foaming at the mouth? How come I'm not? You understand? Those people was able to make that leap because somewhere within their 4 generations on both sides, which is 8 again, 4 in the mother and 4 in the father, somewhere in that period coming over this way, somebody was very spiritual, or someone dove into Shango, or someone dove into Yoruba, or someone dove into Voodoo or Bodé. Someone dealt with some of these things in your family, and they have opened the porthole in your genes for in-embodied souls to step in. And they haunt you and they torment you until you learn psychic self-defense and how to go back down that channel or that semi-vortex and patch that hole up genetically. So it's something that has to be taught to you gradually, so while you're learning to open this channel, you're also learning psychic self-defense, so you become a spiritual warrior when you get back there. Because there's beings you will have to fight off this in your mind, and this is why Native Americans often tell people when they're in a sweat lodge and they're going through these, they're smoking these peyote, they take them on these journeys, and in these journeys they come up against demons and monsters, and they'll tell the chief or Maku will tell them, this is the demon that's inside you. These are illusions. You've got to defeat them. But when you're standing there, you see a mountain lion perched on a mountain getting ready to leap on you. And you got to remember that you were taught by your Maku or your shaman, whoever, that this is an illusion that you're creating. And it'll get more ferocious as your fear increases. And once you overcome that, then that mountain lion disappears. And then you start a little further down and you come across a tremendous rattlesnake. And you're cornered by this rattlesnake. Because you have seen movies in your lifetime where people were caught and trapped by rattlesnakes, and you said, what would I do? And the moment you added the I in it, you planted it in your subconscious mind as being a part of your life. What would I do if Godzilla came over the mountain? You've now instilled Godzilla in your mind forever. What would I do if Dracula had me cornered? What would I do if the Wolfman was chasing me through the woods? And that's why they make these kind of movies. Because they know as God that you're constantly taking that unshaped ashlar and bringing it into a shaped ashlar, taking an uncut stone, a heap of mud, and constantly cutting bricks to build this strong character. And in that they must inflict, or maybe they must implant all of these kind of thoughts that deviate, that take you off the path. They work with us from horror. They work with us with lust. They work with us with greed. They implant all the things in us that interfere with that direct path. You know what I'm saying? So you have to take that journey gradually, step by step, so that you also put on, as the Bible would say, you put on the armor of God. You see, because you're going to fight the dragon. And you become a dragon slayer. But you are the architect. You are the fashioner and the shaper and the former of the dragon. And only you can overcome the dragon when you give back the world of illusion. It's a battle, but it can definitely be overcome. Yes, anyone?
Well, my question was, when you referred to stepping back from the physical and looking at your body or what's happening is just a play. Should we step back as far as to look at ourselves from above and see our physical body, or should we look at it from inside out, look at the body as far as this isn't me, where you say in the mind book, these desires are not me, and the other things that you said, as far as we step back, as far as look at ourselves from above and try and control our bodies like a playmaster, or just let it happen?
No, you have to take control of it. but saying it is written in a book, so I can introduce the thought. Saying it from the book will not make it happen. It's just when I say something like, this is what you must do, this is written so that you can get an idea of what you must do. You can't read that and use that as the means for which to accomplish it. You follow what I'm saying? You then have to learn the path of finding yourself, of turning yourself inside out, of making that inner journey. And believe you me, for lack of a better word, you're not that far away spiritually from what you want. Otherwise, you would not have been led to this position in the earth. You wouldn't be sitting here right now aspiring to find out. There are people out there that are roaming endlessly in the Las Vegas mind. They're nowhere near where you're trying to come. So some part of your genes, be it family or whatever, is leading you towards this path for a reason. Don't try to solve it all at one time. This is the first time that I'm even talking to people of Amun one-on-one. Most of the time, I'm preaching fire and brimstone about the coming calamities of the world. And I didn't put time aside for the spiritual people because I was busy trying to reap the harvest of the physical people to get them ready. And I'm finding out so many of them are wasted. They're so caught up in that world, it's a waste of time. It is time to focus on you. That told me, that said something that said, the spiritual sons and daughters are gathering. The physical people will gather here every Saturday night. But if you can gather here on Saturday night and be that spiritual person, you rule. You gather here only on Saturday night but have no concern about the spiritual, you're dead. You know what I'm saying? This is just the first time. There's going to be more things happening. More was supposed to happen today with your alignment. Maps are supposed to be set out on the grass in circles of 9. You're supposed to have certain chants so you can learn the chant. To start getting your body ready for that transition. But nature says it's not ready yet. And we're trying to build a spiritual circle. And we have to wait until so it rains. We can't put the match down, have you sitting in water, but we can sit in, we can talk and prepare ourselves. There's a journey more than just a little bit you read in the pamphlets. By far. It's about being ready. Alright? How many people did fast? That's good enough. You're starting, you see. Yeah, somebody want to say something? Yeah.
Is there a reason why at the age of, let's say, myself, around 5, 6, I was around adults, and I said to myself, they don't know anything. And ever since then, I've been looking for a master. Now, I thought I was influenced by, like, I used to be into martial arts, watching karate flicks, and I would see like these Shaolin monks and the things they were able to do.
Mm-hmm. Or they do on television.
Right. Or what they do on television.
Right, because you haven't seen none of them do it in reality. No, I'm serious, because I studied martial arts many years too. And you go all the way over there, you don't never see none of them jump up in trees that are 30 feet tall. You only see them in Bruce Lee movies. And when I went over there to study, I wanted to see them do the things that I saw, catch a bullet in your hands and all that kind of stuff. I was told that's not real, that's a movie. After I paid the flight over there.
And so, within me, I said, well, wow, why is it that all these people around me don't really seem to know anything? So, from that point on, I started on my journey searching for a master.
Spiritual master. Spiritual master.
Right.
Because you are the master.
For a spiritual master or God, as you said. And so, boom, at the age of 19, I stumbled on to you. No one told me. They just went looking. I woke up and it's like, I have to find this individual. And I said to myself, the first person I come to, I want to go to them and ask them, where can I find? That's when we was in Islam. And I saw a brother and wife. And I said, well, where are you guys based at? And he told me, Bushwick, Brooklyn. I said, fine, how do I get there? He told me how, and I went there. And I said, how do I learn? How do I become a part is, what is this? And they laugh kind of. They say, don't you know what you're getting into? I said, well, no, but I know that I'm looking. And so I said, fine. That's when they gave me my Shahada and so on and so forth. And then as, I've gone throughout my life, there are certain things that occur to me that I don't know if it's my mind doing it or what. If other people experience it or not, which is so many times throughout my life, I'll see something, and as if I lived it, I ended my life, and I got a fresh new start, and I started from that point on, and it keeps happening. It keeps happening as if my whole life ended, I lived and died, and then I started from that point on. And it constantly is going throughout my whole life. I mean, like once a month, I'll be at a point, I say, wow. And it's as if I lived that whole life of existence, died, came back, and then I started at that point.
Now, what I hear is at 5 years old, you was 2 years ahead of yourself. Because at 7 years old is when the greatest part of a child's imagination comes in. The reason why I use imagination is because that's when they start imagining themselves things that they are not or things that they can be, or they wish to fly, though they might put a cape on and dive across the room because they don't know about a school where they can learn to fly a plane yet, but they're fascinated by flying, so the imagination sets in. But that's part of the 7-year cycles that has to do with every human being's zero time reference. Right? Starting at 7 and it keeps on multiplying. At one time you did that from 9 to 9 and at Verse Force did it from 6 to 6, but you're falling back to 7. They've taken away certain of your strands and you're back to 7. So you move at 7 to 14 to 21, to 18, goes on like that, it keeps on going like that, 21, etc. So now you probably are having a loop, what they call a spiritual loop, is you are something in your younger life jilted you, and it caused you to speed up in time. It could have been an incident in your family, it could have been a tragic death, and I'm not trying to sound like a psychic reader, believe me. It could be any of a number of things that gave you that jolt, and it pushed you up 2 years mentally. And as a 5-year-old, you turned around and looked at people, and they didn't have anything to offer. And that's when you made it's like a rebirth. And you went up again, 14, another rebirth. And it keeps on going through cycles like that. As you get older and you're a seeker, what happens is these times lap over, and you become fed up. What you're calling starting all over again with life is I'm fed up that this portion of my life is not fulfilling to me. I must find another route. And then that other route takes you to another level. So you keep feeling, I'm being born again. I have a new life. You're not the only one that does that. Many people do that. They get fed up with stages in their life, in their own mind, and they write them off as new zero time references, like start again. You're not really starting again. You're really a combination of all of the thoughts and all of the imagination, all the feelings that you ever had, but you feel obsolete ones, and therefore you have the ability to erase them out your subconscious mind. But if needed, you can reflect. You follow what I'm saying? And that's why you're able to say, well, when I was 5 years old, I looked around and I saw that the people were not, which meant that you still have stored. You follow that? In that hidden submental part, them stories, those pieces of your life that appeared to shape and form. You knew at that time you was a seeker, that you was not a person on a spiritual path. You didn't know what spiritual path even meant back then. But you knew you was on a journey somewhere. Most people do. But most people get we get sidetracked by so much of the advertisements, advertisements, and the excitement, the bicycle, the basketball court. We get sidetracked by chasing the girls in the schoolyard until we lose the most important parts of our life. If you study back to your so-called religious scholars, they spent from 1 to 13 with masters. And then at 13 was declared a man. And then from 13, by the time they got to 19, they were married and had a family. You follow what I'm saying? That is still within inside you.
in your chromosomes, these things that happened in your past are still in your present. You're living in a circle of time. Time is not moving forward or backwards. You're a part of it. It's expanding in and out and passing you like waves going back and forth each time. Like if I put a dot in the center, throw a pebble, and it starts to go out, and this keeps going back like this here. This is what time is. So you have time crosses where events can recycle themselves, appear to renew themselves. If all the waves keeps on crossing, and you can see it on sound waves, it actually happens, it bounces and they come back off themselves. Well, the human body is vibrating off sound, so we react just like it. And all our thought patterns are sound, they're light. In order for them to become emotions or energy in motion, they work that way. You see? So it don't feel like you're a stranger. The strange part is over because you was on your way to find a spiritual master. And it took you down many schools of thought, all which are beneficial to you. Because all that you obtain while you was in martial arts is still beneficial to you if for no other reason you learn to take care of your body. You learn how to exercise and train and discipline your body, which will help you discipline the mind. You know what I'm saying? But those are just leaping thoughts. You know, them cycles, you're still in tune with your real self. Everybody is seeking a spiritual master. And sometimes they don't stay with their spiritual master, they're not strong enough. You know what I'm saying? When they find when the master's not saying what they want, like I said before, when Moshe or Moses met Melchizedek, what happened? He told him, you're not really ready for me, because you're looking at me, you think you know what you see. How many times I tell you, seeing is, and hearing and reading is believing. You know what I'm saying? That's why I said, you said, and I went to see those shadows, and I said, well, what you saw on television. But that was only what they made us see it, and because we saw it on television, we really believed there was men that could jump up on a building up there, flip back there, and then flip back down, you know. We really believed it when we was kids, didn't we? And they could take, steel bars and break them with their hands. We didn't take into consideration skin and bone and tissues and what they're composed of, or they got their mind on there. They teach if you think your mind on the other side of that brick, you just got to think through the brick. And you can punch the brick, you can think all you feel like to the brick, these bones, these bristles, and all this, and say, I ain't with you on the brick thing. I'm with you on the exercise and the cottage and all that, but I ain't with you when it comes down to punching your hand through his brick hand. And it won't go through. And then they teach you, but if you really believe in your mind you can break that brick, you'll be able to break that brick. And that's because they have special bricks baked. You watch any martial arts instructor when he's training kids, he touched the wood on the grain. You know you broke wood on the grain. When you go pop, it's already got the grain going this way. You can just about sneeze and break it. Let me go get a piece of teak wood. Or ebony. I want to see you break some ebony or some teak. You don't see that, do you? You can hit a brick at the right spot and break it. Yes. Okay? This is the last question, because I know you're out there line.
All right. This is a question concerning lesson 1 that I had some time back, and I really want to get a good understanding of it. As I did my first lesson, I noticed I seen a being of Al-Qadar, and eventually it went to one eye, and it went to a question of who am I and what am I. I just didn't understand that as far as me writing it in and returning it, but I passed and went on. I just really need to get an understanding of my first lesson more than my second and third one.
All right. In the first lesson, where it tells you about how Melchizedek will come and visit you, you follow? Had it not been told to you and you accept it, it may not have happened. Do you follow that? Sometimes to make an event take place, a person, especially a graphic person like we are, must be told the event. If you were not taught about a God, could there be a devil?
So the principle of teaching about God graphically creates a necessity for a devil. And in the event that a devil is totally eliminated from the subconscious mind, then there'd be no need to call him God. So you create a scenario that takes a person to another level. And so you say, you know, you are capable of being visited by Melchizedek. You have that ability once you bring yourself to a certain level. And the deity in you will bring Melchizedek to you. Yes, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Will make that happen. So the first lesson of people who made that kind of contact, those people connected an etheric cord directly to me when they did that. And thus I can get through their etheric cord into their dreams and into their life on various occasions to guide them. Those who blocked it because they didn't believe it possible did not allow me to make that etheric connection to them. Thus I can't get through the etheric cord to make contact with them on a spiritual level. I only meet them on the physical plane. That first lesson was making a link, a silsila, as the lesson explained it, a chain link between me and you, and me and the universe to you. I'm the connection to the Enad, the 9 Enads, and that connection is through me to you. That's what that first lesson is supposed to do. It's supposed to link us. And sometimes we tell people, if you didn't get that first lesson, don't be so hasty to get more books. Go back and study it until you grasp not so much of what the words are saying, but until you have that vision. I hear you.
Is that an actuality?
It's an actuality to the person it's happening to, and it will be a dream to a person who's looking on. Because both worlds are real.
Right on.
I'll explain that. If you can have a nocturnal emission, which means that while in a dream state you can actually have a physical reaction, then there's definitely a connection between the physical. You can actually, in university, when students were asleep, we pour water in their hand and they pee the bed. We did that stuff too. And your body can actually make a link while you're in your dream. A person can step into your dream physically, because sometimes when you're laying in your bed and about to wake up, if your brother comes in the room, he becomes a part of your dream and then you wake up. This is not so that only a spiritual being can do it. There's a doorway left open for beings to get into your dreams if you welcome them. And if you don't welcome them, but the hippocampus area of the brain starts to hallucinate and you start bringing things into your brain that you don't want there. And they traumatize you, chase you, and you wake up in a what? A full sweat. How come your sweat glands is activating if it's all imagination and no reality? You would be imagining that you're sweating and wake up dry. But the fact that in a dream state, as they call it, you are actually having a physical reaction tells you that those two worlds, mesh and become one. You hear me? So it is a reality. And the people that have me visit them when they need me, and have me visit their relatives when they need guidance, and their mothers in the hospital, and the different things, it is real to me and to them. And those people who sit down before their affirmation, and in their home, and they make that spiritual connection with that letter they send me, and they put their hands on that letter, we connect right up with each other. And I send energy through that, the stuff you're doing to Om, through me, to you. That is real. Right? What do?
نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله الوالي الكريم وصلى الله على الأنبياء أجمعين والمسيح والمهدي والمجدد لمن مرسل والمرسلين أما بعد. Are we not the bearers of witness that nothing would exist if Allah didn't create it? And that He is alone and has no part? And that all gratitude is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the sustainer of all the boundless universes. All gratitude is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the generous, eternal friend. And send salutations of Allah on all of His prophets and His apostles, and on the Messiah, the anointed one, and on the Mahdi, the guide, and on the Mujaddid, the reformer, which was all sent from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We send greetings and we send peace throughout the boundless universe to all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
The Man of the Hour, airing 7 days a week at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on WGAG Radio.